Today, let's talk about a woman who didn't just ask for change. She demanded it. She fought for it, she went to war for it, and she paid a heavy price. We are, of course, talking about the formidable, and yeah, often controversial, leader of the British suffragette movement, Emmeline Pankhurst.
But before we get into the fire and fury of her campaign, you've really got to understand just how huge her impact was. Emmeline Pankhurst wasn't just another protester. She was a genuine architect of social change. Get this, in 1999, Time magazine named her one of the 100 most important people of the entire 20th century. They argued she didn't just help win the vote, she fundamentally rewired society's DNA. As Time put it, she shook society into a new pattern from which there could be no going back. It's that simple. There was a before Pankhurst, and there was an after.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did a woman from a pretty conventional background manage to ignite a fire that would burn down the old order and help build something totally new? Well, let's find out.
Her story doesn't start on some picket line. Nope, it begins in a proper Victorian home in Manchester. Now, Pankhurst was born into a politically active family, but even they had their limits, especially when it came to their daughters.
Just listen to this quiet but totally devastating comment from her own father, which she overheard as a little girl, just perfectly sums up the world she was up against. A world where even a smart, capable girl was seen as, well, a missed opportunity for a son. That sentiment, it would fuel her for the rest of her life. But the real turning point wasn't just personal, it was political. As a poor law guardian, she came face to face with the brutal reality for poor women. We're talking pregnant women scrubbing floors right up until they gave birth, children suffering from horrible bronchitis. That experience convinced her that charity was just a band-aid. To really change these women's lives, they needed political power. They needed the vote. And that conviction, it led to a massive shift. After years and years of polite petitions and bills that went nowhere in Parliament, Pankhurst's patience just ran out. She decided that if the system wouldn't listen to their words, it was going to have to deal with their actions. So in 1903, she founded the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU. This was a radical, women-only organization, and its motto said everything you need to know. Deeds, not words. The era of asking nicely was officially over. Okay, and this is a really crucial distinction to make. You have suffragists, that's the broader, more peaceful movement. But the word suffragette, that was actually made up by a newspaper to mock Pankhurst and her militant followers. But you know what they did? They didn't just accept the insult, they owned it. They wore it like a badge of honor to show they were different, that they were done with a slow, cautious approach.
And with this new identity came a wild escalation in tactics. The WSPU's fight for the vote was about to become an all-out war of attrition against the British state. And the personal cost for Pankhurst and her followers, it was going to be immense.
The campaign just intensified so quickly. What started with heckling politicians turned into smashing windows, then assaulting police officers, then widespread arson, and eventually even bombing campaigns. And when they were arrested, they refused to be treated like common criminals, staging hunger strikes that turned prisons into battlegrounds.
But listen to how Pankhurst justified all this. Standing in the courtroom dock, she made this incredibly powerful argument. She said, look, we aren't criminals out to cause chaos. We're citizens without a voice, using the only language you've left us to demand the right to help make the laws that govern our lives.
The government's response was just brutal. Prison authorities started force-feeding the hunger strikers, a violent, painful procedure with tubes and steel gags. Pankhurst called it civilized torture, and hearing about it actually galvanized public opinion. It showed just how far the state was willing to go to silence these women.
But the cost wasn't just physical, not by a long shot. Pankhurst's absolute, single-minded devotion to the cause completely fractured her own family. Her daughters, Adela and Sylvia, who dared to disagree with her authoritarian leadership and escalating tactics, were cast out. Adela was literally given a one-way ticket to Australia. That rift, it never healed. A heartbreaking casualty of this political war.
And then, just as the conflict was reaching its absolute peak, the entire world changed. The start of World War I in 1914 led to one of the most surprising and frankly controversial pivots in Pankhurst's entire life.
Literally overnight, the enemy changed. Pankhurst, who had been the government's #1 antagonist, declared a truce. She redirected all of the WSPU's incredible energy away from fighting for the vote and towards fighting Germany. She argued that this German peril was a much bigger threat to humanity. And as you can imagine, this move absolutely stunned many of her closest allies.
And her political evolution, well, it didn't stop there. After the war, her focus shifted again, this time to fighting the threat of communism. The woman who was once a radical, a socialist sympathizer, eventually joined the establishment. She actually became a member of the Conservative Party in 1926.
So after a lifetime of rebellion, imprisonment, and these incredible transformations, how did it all end? Let's take a look at the final victory and the very complicated legacy she left behind.
The first big breakthrough came in 1918 when some women, those over 30, were finally given the vote. But the ultimate victory, equal voting rights for all women over 21, that came in 1928. And here's the tragic, almost unbelievable irony. Pankhurst died on June 14th, just 18 days before that act became law. She never got to see her life's work completely realized.
Her status as a national icon was cemented just 2 years later, when this statue was put up right next to the Houses of Parliament, the very institution she had once attacked. It perfectly captures her journey from outsider to celebrated hero, her bronze form forever gesturing towards the seat of power she forced to listen.
And her relevance is definitely not a thing of the past. A full century after women first got the vote, this new statue was unveiled in her home city of Manchester. It's such a powerful symbol, connecting her historic struggle to the ongoing fight for equality today.
So we end up right back where we started, with this incredibly complex person. Was she a hero who woke up an entire nation? Or was she a fanatic whose violent tactics actually hurt the cause? Her impact is absolutely undeniable, but the debate over her methods, that's still raging. And it leaves us with one final thought. How should history remember a rebel who had to break the law in her fight to help make it?